can. And my plan is to figure out a way, whether it's just uploading it or whether you guys send me thumb drives or whatever, is to give you guys that stuff so that you don't feel like you just leave, you have whatever contact you have with me today and that's it. You never, you don't get any more information until you pay me money and come back again. I don't like that. So, all right, so go ahead and gather around here, guys, just so we can kind of see what's going on. So what we're gonna do initially here, like I said, we're gonna be working on your connection to the gun, i.e. your grip, your trigger manipulation. So we're gonna start with a drill that's just called one shot or trigger control at speed. So what we're gonna do is, everyone's got a black paster on their target. The start position here is going to be finger, you're gonna have your good grip, you're gonna have finger touching the trigger, but you're not taking any of the slack out. So the finger is touching the trigger, but it's not taking any of the slack out. You're gonna get a standby, you're gonna get a beep, instantaneous shot on the beep, and you'll get about 3 or 4 of those. All right, so now, what are we looking for on this? What's the point of this? The point of having it set up this way is we're taking the ability to consciously adjust or think about what you're doing out of it, and you're just responding to the beep. So now that we know wherever you send that round, I know mechanically what you're doing to the gun under a realistic trigger press, which is gonna be fast and hard, right? And realistic trigger press as far as, you know, running stages and stuff like that. Nobody comes into position, sees a target and goes, bang. Everybody goes, oh shit, target, ba-ba, right? So obviously we have to have a grip and a trigger manipulation that accounts for how we actually manipulate the trigger. And then we can make some tweaks to, you know, what we do grip-wise and trigger-wise, okay? So I'll run this live. When we set it up, everybody will do it live one time, like one, you know, like 3-round string here. Then I'll have you unload, show clear. We'll kind of look at them and then we'll do it dry a few reps. That way you guys get an association for what it is before we kind of switch to the dry fire. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, I'll have Aaron, you want to be my my timer guy here? Okay, so when we do it, this is what it'll be like. So I'll tell everybody like, hey, you know, load, make ready. You'll get a standby and then the beeps will come without any warning. So it'll be standby. And I'll tell you to relax. Okay, so you only get one standby because obviously I don't want you trying to time the beep and bring the conscious back into it. Does that make sense to everybody? Okie doke.
We're doing it all at the same time? Or
everybody will do it all at the same time. It'll just be single beep. Okay, so I'll demo here first. All right, now as well, on this one, I recommend that you have your dot turned down a fair amount. You know, obviously it should still be clear. I wouldn't have it at the absolute lowest, but I would have it at kind of a low level because of, you know, what we're doing here.
All right, stand by.
All right, do it one more time.
Stand by.
Okay. Everybody see what's going on with that? So if you look at that, so didn't even pick that up. Interesting. So what we're looking for on that is for everyone's shot times to be 0.25 or faster. Okay, so that's typically what we associate with the conscious reactive speed. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, is anybody confused by what's going on? Okay, cover down on the targets will be basically even cone and cone here. So kind of line yourselves up on this cone right here, guys.
I'm gonna step in front real quick.
What do you think that probably is?
Done.
0?
Probably 0. Yeah, was this yours, Nate?
Yeah.
Yeah, so could be, right? Or you're shooting irons too, right? So commonly, if he's shooting irons, and I tell him to put that right there, what's he possibly doing with the front sight?
Too high?
Putting the front sight down so he can see the paster, right? So you're probably just putting your front sight there so that you can see that clearly, because that's,
Cover it?
I mean, that would be a reason why that would happen, because this is obviously very good trigger manipulation and everything else. It's just not on the paster. This one here, pretty good. Oh, are you shooting at mine again? Yeah. Okay, so that sounded pretty good. Yeah, so all the black, Josh has got all the black. Same thing here, right? Say pretty good. You know, stuff going on there. Right here, what do we think this is? Yeah, a little bit of that classic 7 o'clock. Now we're at about 5 yards, right? So that's kind of what you expect to see. If we back up to 10 or 15 yards, what do we think we're gonna see? Like way out here, right? And I like doing it this distance first because it's easy to teach, but you're gonna get the most out of this at probably 10 yards or between 10 yards and 15, because everything you do a little bit wrong is gonna show way up on the target. Kind of same thing here. So we got one, he probably just sucked on that one. You know, everything else is pretty good, but one shitty, like trigger press there. Similar here, so we're pushing low, a little bit left. What did we say straight down was? Yeah, overactive shooting hand. Pushing a little bit right here, so a couple flyers, and then same thing here. So we got, did you just adjust your point of aim on this?
The second one, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So were you putting, is this where you're hitting?
That's my first 3, and the black is my second.
Okay, so were you putting your dot on the black and you were getting these?
Correct.
Okay, what distance are you zeroed at?
Whatever this was, a little 25, roughly.
25, what? That's like 12.
Whatever.
Like-
That's like 100.
All right. So that's something to keep in mind as well, is zero distance. I'm not really dogmatic about it. All my dot guns are zeroed at 25, and I've shot a lot of big matches, and I've never once ever compensated up or down with my dot to hit anything, and it's never been an issue. If you move the zero closer, you are going to have some of those. Now, maybe for you, it's a good idea. Maybe you think that's good because you're like, hey, I know at 10 yards, I'm exactly point of aim, point of impact. But the closer you get, then those dudes tend to start to have to compensate a little bit. Does that make sense? Okay. Level or two if it's still too bright. So one thing, and we'll do this as part of a drill later, but one thing you'll notice is if you purposely stare at the dot will have the appearance of a lot of moving. But if you stare at the target, the dot won't move. Now, do you actually think the dot is moving more? I don't know. But you can change your perception of what's going on based on where you put your focus. Okay, what else? Who else was driving off target? What you got?
Same thing. It was every time I press the trigger, it would kind of do a little bit of a loop.
Yeah, I call that like just dot whip because you're kind of hitting it and you're just jerking the dot around. What else? What down here?
Yeah, just tracking off to the right.
You're pushing to the right? Okay, I'm gonna come watch you next time because that's weird for a right-hander, but odd things do happen. Okay, so we're gonna do this again. So a couple things I want you guys to kind of check, and this is part of the learning process, is when it comes to grip, there's not really any like exactly specific, like, hey, this is the correct grip. Frankly, the best shooter in the world, Eric Raffel, is a French guy. He puts his trigger finger of his support hand over his trigger guard. I mean, you're not supposed to do that, but he is bar none the best in the world. So you can't tell the guy not to do it, right? So what I've noticed in my observations, shooting with a lot of really good shooters and shooting a lot of big matches and stuff, is that what it seems to be is that if you have bigger and like meatier hands, some form of having the shooting thumb on the back of the hand is the most common. Or even guys will just kind of have this thumb and they'll just leave it floating up. That seems to be the most common for good shooters that have big, meaty hands. If you have longer or skinnier hands, those guys all tend to have more of a stacked thumb position there. Personally, I've got meaty hands. If I stack my thumbs, I put tension to the gun and I drive it to the left. So I try to always put my thumb on the back of the hand. Where we also see the game going is the game has kind of shifted more to kind of this 45-degree thumb position. It used to be the like super, I still kind of shoot like that, you know, with the thumb super craned forward, you know, kind of that. Where the game seems to be shifting to is more of this. It's easier on your wrist. It's a little bit easier to, you know, kind of bring your wrist into a good position where you can squeeze. For me, it's not quite as natural, but this seems to be roughly where most of the grips of the good guys are kind of going, and fewer of the guys are in this really straightforward thumb. Okay, so when we're doing this, if you're having issues with your dot, try a different grip. Try to play with that, and that's exactly what I would use this drill for at home. Is I would mess around with different grips and different trigger presses until I get to where the majority of my like hits, whether dry or live, are in that paster. Then okay, hey, I think I'm onto something. Now, as far as trigger manipulation, now there's kind of a couple things to do. So probably the easiest way, and this is basically what I do, is I just slap. Finger probably comes all the way off the trigger, slap. It's easy to be fast that way, but you do have the potential, if you have a lot of tension in the shooting hand, of putting a lot of pressure into the gun there. All right, so if you, slapping is fine. The other one, another one that guys do is just what we call rolling. So guys are going to kind of put their finger on the trigger, and as opposed to just pressing, they're kind of rolling their finger down the trigger. Can you guys see that, what I'm doing? Right, so as opposed to just a slap, it's more, they kind of roll through the trigger. That's kind of another common one that guys do. Or the other one we just call kind of like stacking. So guys will kind of, they'll basically like just push through as opposed to slap. They'll stay in connection with the trigger, but they'll stack and push through, stack and push through. So those are a couple of the basic ways of manipulating the trigger. I recommend you try any one of them and all of them and different grips until you get to where you do this drill with very minimal or no disturbing of the dot at speed. That's why it's called trigger control at speed. So when you're doing it, it's instantaneous response and then, you know, a nice hard slap or press on the trigger for that. Okay, we're gonna set this up. We'll do this again dry. So dry again. If you're someone who is having